Brent Gilchrist is the president of JDS Resources and joined Dean's Knight as CEO in 2024. With extensive experience in mine finance and investment, Brent co-founded and led JDS Silver Inc., overseeing the development of the Silvertip mine in BC, which was sold to Kerr Mining. He also co-founded CanMag Industries, which developed a magnetite plant sold to Mount Poly Mine. Prior to his resource career, Brent was a Stanley Cup winning NHL player and licensed investment advisor. His leadership combines expertise in resource development, finance, and community engagement, driving responsible and sustainable resource projects. Thank you for joining me, Brent.
I couldn't have said it better. Thanks, Anna.
Okay, so I think the first thing that we want to get into, I mean, you really, I feel, have earned the right to be considered an expert in investing in the resource space, especially in Canada. And we don't have many of those. So, we very much appreciate your insights. Why don't we first start off, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your journey, because you really did start on the operational side of mining and now have really moved yourself into the investing side. So maybe you could just tell us the journey and where ESG has followed in that journey.
I think, great start. So learning the business from the ground up, I guess, and Jeff Stibbert was my partner. And I joined Jeff to help him with the capital markets and raising money and figuring out projects that we could develop on our own. JDS is a mine builder, an engineering firm, construction company, but Jeff and I's idea was to do it on our own because we had the team to do it. So I didn't really know the resource business till I joined Jeff. My job was to raise money and develop projects. And people said, how did you figure out how to be in the mining business? I said, well, I built a mine and I was in charge of the money. Now I had a lot of engineers and a lot of geologists and a lot of construction people that were technical. But when you're in charge of the money, you had to raise it and you had to answer to shareholders. You learn really fast. So that's really the experience I bring now. And there's lots of great investors out there, and there's lots of great oil and gas and mining investors. But if you've never actually done it, and we've done it a few times, you really know some of the downfalls of it. So I think that experience was awesome.
When did JDS Mine start?
Jeff started JDS in 2004, and I joined him in 2011 to start what we call the venture side of the business, JDS Resources.
Okay, and can you just touch on what you've seen from an environmental standpoint, what you've seen change in the mining sector from 2011 to now?
Yeah, so, I think you could go back 50 or 60 years. Mining, in some ways, in schools and in different circles today is a bad word, yet we look around the room, how we live every day. We try to explain to people, like, what were you using 40 years ago? Yeah, right? You weren't using this. And do you think that the mining industry, from an environmental standpoint, a technological standpoint, hasn't improved in a way that looks like from your dial-up phone to your iPhone? And so the environmental standards have improved a great deal in the last 10, 12 years. But think about the last 50 years. And we have some unreclaimed mines all over the country that people they hiss about that this is horrible. But that's what we knew then. And what we know now is much better. And what we'll know in 50 years is much better. I say this a lot, Anna, but when I present, is Canada does two things better than anybody else in the world. We produce hockey players better than anybody else. And we produce better miners than anywhere else. And we export all
Brent
of our...
is both.
I'm not a miner. I'm not technical. And you introduced me as an expert, and I would say I'm highly knowledgeable in the resource space and resource investing, but I'm not technical. I've certainly picked up a lot of it. But the other thing we've done is we've become the best oil and gas producers on the planet. There's no doubt about it, from profitability to environmental to social governance, you name it. We're the best in the world. We don't even teach it in school, or we're not even proud of it.
We have a colleague at the CSE who was visiting some mines in Africa, and they don't have hard hats or hard shoes on when they're going down into the mine. What we do in Canada, I think just the fact that you're mining in Canada, we have standards that are above, most on a global scale, would you say?
Well, it goes beyond that, because any Canadian company that's listed on the CSE or any of the other exchanges, who cares about them? But any company that's listed in Canada or even a private company in Canada, you adhere to the Canadian standards of mining everywhere in the world. And if you don't, you will be called to the mat on it. So we export our talent, our environmental ability, our financial markets, because our financial markets are still number one in the world for resource capital raising. People don't realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we really do have a bit of a stage that has a global view on it right now, or for quite a long time, I think, in the resource sector, as Canada really has had that stage.
Well, if we'd stand up and be proud of what we do, and I think, I've been really frustrated with our country because we're Canadian investors. We invest in Canadian companies, Canadian entrepreneurs, like we see 6 of them here, great entrepreneurs. I love to see that. I may not give them money because I have issues around risk, but that's okay. We need these folks doing what they're doing. But in Canada now, we don't have any foreign investment left. Where did it go? And we don't even have domestic investment. All of our own money is invested mostly in the United States. So if we're not going to invest in our own country, why the hell would anybody else?
Thank you, Brent. Okay, that's a good lead-in. Thank you for that, because what I want to talk about next is you have transitioned into being CEO of Dean's Knight. Tell us about Dean's Knight, and then let's talk about some of the practices there.
Yeah, so Dean's Knight's a 32-year-old firm. Jeff and I had an opportunity to join them as partners, and it made sense for me to be part of the leadership team. We started a fund with Dean's Knight, and it's the only third fund they've ever started in their history. It's a 32-year-old firm, like I said. 2 strategies they've been running for 32 years, and then we started an all-resource strategy. Dean's Knight has been a great resource investor because they've been a great Canadian investor. And I don't think you can really be a great Canadian investor without having some exposure to resources. So the young portfolio manager there, Kelsey Dunwood, approached me to partner up. We partnered up 5 years ago on an all-resource fund. All of our companies are housed in Canada, but they do business all over the world, whether they're oil and gas. Now, Calgary and the Canadian oil industry, a little bit different because it is landlocked, but our great Canadian miners do it wherever they find a great deposit and wherever somebody will allow them to build a mine. And that's, of course, one of the issues in Canada is we can still permit mines. It just takes a lot of money and a lot of time. And I know there's a lot of platitudes going on in our country right now about how fast we're going to permit mines. I don't really listen to platitudes and slogans. I'd like to see action, and we haven't seen any action yet.
Okay, I'm afraid of asking this, but with our political landscape and our neighbors next door, do you think that this will encourage more permitting, more resource-driven activity in Canada?
I think so. I'm hopeful. I'd like to see more. Some of the new bills, C14, C15 in the province here, C59 and C69 federally, these are poisonous bills for the business of Canada, just so you know. And if you want to spend a little bit of time, AI will show you what they say. And there's a lot of black holes in those. So until we streamline that part of it, it doesn't sound like people really want to. A lot of it is just talking.
Right. Well, hopefully that this does instigate some change and shake things up a bit. Okay, let's talk about Dean Knight, and let's talk about when you're investing. Now, again, you do invest mostly in Canadian resource projects, right? Or Canadian housed resource projects. Do you invest with a mandate that it must have a developed ESG program? What does that look like? And how do you do your due diligence on that?
So the good thing with Canadian companies that are listed on our exchanges is they're pretty bulletproof in terms of their environmental standards and their ESG. We're not a big fan of the word ESG. I think it was a Wall Street, Larry Fink, BlackRock, idea, construct that really the mining business, we should be offended by Wall Street creating ESG when we've had CSR. Corporate social responsibility for 50 years, and it's always gotten better. And then all of a sudden they wanted to give scores. Really? Scores? Let me show you what a battery looks like. Let me show you where lithium and cobalt come from. And you're telling me that's ESG? Well, they missed a little on environment and social and governance. You want to know where cobalt comes from? The DRC. Yeah, most of it. And 99% of it's processed in China. So at scale, it doesn't matter. I mean, I'd love to see cobalt in the country. We do produce some here, but not at scale.
Is the need from shareholders starting to change practices in the mining sector?
No, I think we've had a transformation of ESG being not what it's cracked up to be. We're all about the environment and social and governance. That's super important, but the ESG score made no sense to anybody. So shareholders, I will tell you one thing. There's one responsibility we have to shareholders, always. It's the number one responsibility. What is it?
Return on capital.
Exactly. After that, everything's important. It's not that, but we're not putting your money or my money into things that lose money. And that's typically what we've gone down with wind and solar and battery investments. One stat, I'm going to throw one stat out. We've spent $8 trillion in 5 years on the energy transition, and what have we received for it? The world's energy complex is run on 3% wind and solar. 8 trillion for 3%? No, not 8 trillion for 3%. 8 trillion for less than 3%, because we had wind and solar input into the energy complex before we spent 8 trillion. Where are we going with that? That's irresponsible investing, not responsible investing.
Do you think that, and this is something I've wondered, is as the next generation of investors come to the market, and I think we really did see that transition happen during the pandemic when people really started exploring it on their phones at home. Do you think that they have fundamental issues and concerns with the resource sector, and how do we change that?
School.
Yeah.
No, I mean, they do, it's not just young people, by the way. We saw in the last election was a different voting schedule by young people. They, in my opinion, they were strong in the vote that I like. Now, no argument here to the people that like the outcome of the election, but we have to teach it. Nobody knows where anything comes from. Like if you ask somebody, where does electricity come from? They'll be looking at the lights, like the plug-in. We are so wealthy in the Western world. We got time to think about stupid things all day, and all of our energy is like that, and all of our steel and our copper and our buildings. We call the contractor, and then we just bitch about, wow, why is that so expensive? Well, I can show you why it's so expensive. You won't let me build copper mines.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any area of the resource sector that is exciting to you right now? I mean, other than just general mining, is there stuff coming up, that innovative elements coming to the resource sector you like?
Yeah, so we're not innovators. Like the gentleman here that spoke, they're innovators, and it's awesome, and we want them to succeed, and we want to reap the benefits of that. We're pretty, meat and potatoes. We like oil and gas investments. We like copper and base metals, and we like precious metals, and that's sort of the three legs of our stool. But we are very interested in uranium. We have, good positions in uranium companies, Canadian uranium companies, and we are very hopeful that the world catches fire again. Canada built 20 can-do plants between 1970 and 1990. 20. We can build things if we put our minds to it. 20 nuclear power plants were built in this country in 20 years, and they were innovative, can-do, heavy water reactors, and that industry just died on some green initiative that nuclear was dangerous. And we all know, look at any stats, it's the safest energy in the world, and if you don't want CO2, it's the only one. Because wind and solar are not CO2.
Just to wrap things up, we could talk forever up here, Brent. We'll do this again with I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to bring microphones when I come over for dinner.
Let's do it. You're all invited.
Any final thoughts on where you see things going in the resource sector? Any words of advice of where people should be doing their due diligence if they want to apply responsible investment practices in the resource sector?
Yeah, I think that can be personal. Responsible investing can be personal, and I'm not here to judge anybody. But I think to understand the life cycle in the resource sector or whatever you're investing, it's about the life cycle. It's not about necessarily the tailpipe in the car. There's much more that go into the investment. The final emission of an ICE vehicle is the pollution. But if you look at anything else, look at the entire life cycle, and it's the cost as well. Like, there's some incredible ideas out there about resources and energy, but we can't afford it. And when I say we can afford some pretty expensive energy. I know nobody in this room really wants to, but the rest of the world can't. So responsible might mean, like, do poor people get energy like we didn't have 100 years ago that we have now? The world wants the energy we have, and it's the only input for all this. All of your wealth, the way you live today, has one input in common with all Western countries or developed countries, and it's energy. And if you don't have it, forget it. So we've had the greatest misallocation of capital in mankind history with this energy transition. It's the wrong direction. This is not an argument about CO2 or climate change. This is an argument about you're not doing anything, you're just spending a lot of money.
Brent, it's always so great talking to you. We're kind of out of time, but does anyone have any questions? Brent is in Vancouver all the time. He's in Kelowna all the time. I know that you're always willing to impart your guidance, so if people do want to contact you, I'm sure you'll make a few minutes for them. But is there any questions before we go into break? One over here.
Ontario Ring of Fire, is that going to happen?
Ontario Ring of Fire.
I hope so. Like, yes, I don't know, but I know, like, what you know is I read the newspaper, I hear Doug Ford, and they have an incredible mine minister in Ontario. George is a fantastic guy, so I hope they open it up.
One more. You. When's dinner? We'll get back to you. Thank you very much, Brent. Thank you for joining us.